What is your best D&D story? I was DM for my first and only D&D game. I, of course, had no idea what I was doing, and not being bothered by official campaigns, I decided to create a short branching story using the provided map for reference. We mostly winged it. Started with a package being delivered by caravan on a country road. 2 players decided to be raiders. The other decided to be a monk who had hitched a ride with the caravan. One thing led to another and the ragtag group stole and then finished delivering the package, which was an artifact that housed the soul of a dead god. The owner of the package turns out to be an evil necromancer. They thwarted the necromancer, and in a beautiful turn of events, one decided to attempt to finish off the dead god, and proceeded to smash the artifact against the ground, which released the soul and brought about an apocalypse. I was proud. My first campaign ever. We had a party of about 6 people, one of whom was playing a minotaur. He was incredibly strong, but very dull and clumsy. We were in a battle near a chasm against a mage who cast a fiery explosion that blinded the rest of our party, but not the minotaur, because on his previous turn, he headbutted an enemy, but fell flat on his face with his dexterity check. So one of our blinded mages managed to kill that mage and the last remnants of his minions. Our next step was to try to cross the chasm to get to a small town where we could restore everyone's vision. Unfortunately, a rickety bridge was the only way across. There was a sign at the edge of the chasm by the entrance to the bridge that seemed to be important. Unfortunately, because everyone was blinded, our thick-headed minotaur had to read it. He rolled a natural 1. Our DM said, "You failed to read the sign. The attempt itself makes you very dizzy. Roll for dexterity check." He rolled another natural 1 and fell into the chasm. One time we assassinated a guy in his bed by creating a portal above his bed and shooting a cannon through the other side. I can imagine them trying to solve that one. Well, it seems the cannonball came from the ceiling. Crap, wizards. Alright boys, call off the investigation. This is a rabbit hole too deep. We'll put up a bounty and call it a day. I played a campaign in the mid 1990s. Was both the first and last one I ever did, but I had a blast. The DM was crazy into this stuff. He had all sorts of spreadsheets to calculate character info, which at the time felt pretty advanced. We played every Saturday for months and it was pretty open-ended, but he definitely had an overall story going. One of the first things we found was a map. It wasn't really clear what the map was for, but it looked like a city. We carried that map around for weeks, often going back to it trying to make something out of it without any luck. Finally one day we were sitting by a campfire getting ready to sleep, and it just happened that one of our characters had the map out and was asking questions about it to the DM. He was being pretty cagey about it, but then he mentioned that something very subtle changed about it after the player sat by the fire. Suddenly we had an idea. Hold it up to the firelight. Nothing. I know. Hold it close to the fire, but not close enough for it to burn. It was at that point that he told us all to get up and led us down to his basement. There was an ironing board all set up with an iron. He turned it on, and to our total astonishment, ironed the map, which had secret writing that appeared, telling us all sorts of secrets about the location of the city, entrances, trusted people to talk to, etc. All this time we had the answers in front of us written in lemon juice. We all cheered and congratulated him on his creativity. It was really amazing to be there for it as the mystery was solved. This was during a Pathfinder campaign. I was playing a level 5 half-elf ranger. We were heading to a town, because plot, but when we got there, a large ice wyvern was wrecking the place. Also because plot, I, being the smart nature-loving guy that I am, was able to determine that this ice wyvern was weak to fire damage, so I dipped my arrows in lamp oil and lit them on fire before shooting them at the wyvern. We were getting our asses handed to us. This wyvern was much stronger than anything we had faced beforehand. Our DM knew this, so he hid a few barrels of gunpowder in a building for us to find and use in the battle. Our druid ran into one of the buildings and saw the gunpowder. The only problem is, in this world, gunpowder was not a widely known about invention. It was only just getting its start in this tiny village. There was a note next to the barrels that said, "Caution, highly flammable. Keep away from fire." The druid sees that I'm shooting flame arrows and comes up with a bright idea. The wyvern was directly outside the house he was in, so he opened a window and rolled the barrel directly under the wyvern's legs. He then shouts to me, shoot it. Note, he is only 5 feet away from the barrel at this time. At this point I pause the game. Me. Wait, my character has no idea what this barrel is, correct? GM. Yes, that is true. Me. So my character has no idea what this will do, and all he notices is a big barrel getting rolled out of a window with a familiar voice yelling at me to shoot it. GM. That is correct. Me. The druid doesn't know what about to happen either, right? GM. He has an idea, but he doesn't know how much danger he's in. Me. Okay, then to avoid metagaming, I immediately shoot a flaming arrow at the barrel. The shot hit the barrel, which then exploded. Our GM decided that the barrel will deal 10d6 damage, and that the size of the explosion will be dependent on the amount of damage that was done. I rolled the d6s and managed to get 7 6s, a 5, and 2 3s, for a total of 53 fire damage. We were level 5. So this is huge. This explosion turned out to be massive. Since the ice wyvern was weak to fire, he took double damage. The dragon got completely blown apart, sending body parts flying. The house the druid was hiding in also got completely demolished. The druid and his familiar were both blown into the wreckage and unconscious. There was also severe damage to many other buildings in the town. The town that we just tried to save is now completely in shambles. Quite a few villagers were dead or dying. We basically nuked this peaceful village. RIP little town. I'm so sorry. You didn't meet a game and you solved their dragon problem. Sounds like a good session to me. I'm playing a thief now who is a compulsive liar, and I have convinced the rest of the party that I have the ability to detect lies. So whenever something comes up, they all look to me to figure out whether it's true or not. I roll every time like I'm detecting lies, but the rolls don't mean anything and I just make up whatever answer sounds fun at the time. So far it hasn't backfired and I'm kinda unofficially leading the party from the shadows. Mayo IDK anything about D&D, but it sounds like you're setting yourself up for a hilarious reveal. First time playing as a group. We are on a classic save the princess quest against a hyper-intelligent orc or kobold or something who was supposed to eventually be our arch nemesis for a pretty long campaign. I am playing a chaotic neutral mage. Pretty much the standard out for myself only character. We, being new players, were super broke. Crap weapons. Hardly any armor. We end up going to a cave where we know the princess is being held. The very first room, our DM is setting the mood torches. Footprints in the dust, a golden sarcophagus in the corner. As he is talking, I raised my hand and he stopped and looked at me expectantly. Is the sarcophagus golden or gold? Really, whatever. It's gold. Anyways, there is an exit tower. How much would you say the sarcophagus weighs? I don't know, like a couple £1,000. Why? I ask around what everyone's max carry weight is. We can carry it. We took the gold sarcophagus and abandoned the quest. Good GM didn't want to backtrack, so he allowed it, but the town we went back to was too poor to know what to do with thousands of pounds of gold. Since we couldn't spend it, we bought the town and imported the best craftsmen from other towns. Eventually, like 5 weeks later, we go back to the cave, decked out in literally the best armor money can buy. Pretty sure the princess was super dead by then. We played a few more games, but since we were newbies, we didn't really like the classes we originally picked, so we re-rolled. The GM was a champ and allowed it, but he kept the characters we abandoned. Our next session was like 100 years later in the same world, playing a chaotic neutral halfling rogue this time. Still a turd. We start in a massive city about to be sacked by an uber powerful necromancer and his undead and orc army. Being a total butt, I go over the wall and start turbo looting the dead bodies outside the wall from the previous skirmishes. The rest of the party has learned to just ignore me by now, but the DM sees an opportunity to get his revenge. He lets me find all this super epic loot, tells me to roll a perception check. Fail. Continue turbo looting and eventually hear noises. I turn around and see the army, and at the head of it is the necromancer. It was my old mage from the previous game. Turns out he never became less of an ashat. I didn't notice the enemy army until they were within bow range, preventing me from going in the gate or climbing the wall. So I do the only thing I can think of. I tell the DM I want to roll to hide. He laughs at me because I'm on a battlefield with nowhere to hide. I rolled a natural 20. Ends the session by graphically describing my halfling rogue entering the anus of the corpse of an especially large orc. The time our gnome paladin hooked up with an NPC because they impressed each other in battle. The setup. We arrive in a town escorting 3 NPCs, the only survivors after their village was sacked by orcs. The townsfolk are suspicious of us. A dragonborn, a dwarf, a gnome, and a tiefling in disguise in a town of vanilla humans. But the villagers vouch for us, and we hole up for the night in the church. The next day, a watchman comes running into town with a dire pronouncement. More orcs are heading this way. Our team suits up and we help the townsfolk hide and the city guards prepare for battle. It's the 4 of us. 4 guards, 2 of the villagers we escorted, and the mayor versus 4 orcs, 1 orog, and an orc of Gruumsh. Now, Viola, the gnome paladin, is very proud of her 5 javelins, and is thrilled to discover that one of the guards is also a javelin user. As he runs past Viola into the heat of battle, she calls after him, "Wait, what's your name?" At which point the DM, who had been naming all the NPCs up to this point, sheepishly admits, "I forgot." We all have a laugh and we're ribbing the guard the DM a bit. "Nice to meet you, I forgot." But despite this, Mr. Javelin Guard more than distinguishes himself in battle by scoring not 1, but 2 critical hits with his javelins. We immediately nickname him Crit. Viola swoons, but keeps her head in the game and scores a critical hit of her own. This does not escape Crit. The battle is won, the loot collected, the plot thickened. We all agree that it's time to take a long rest. Me. Is Viola going to be spending her long rest with Crit? Tiefling. That depends. You're only allowed an hour of light activity. Is that going to be a problem? Viola. DM. Crit comes over to your group. He hands Viola one of his javelins, into which he has carved his address. He also introduces himself. His name is A Forgot. Me. Are you saying he? Critical hit on her? And that's how it came to be that our gnome paladin may or may not have begun a long distance interracial relationship. It's complicated, she says. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing Mr. Got again. My party of 5 was exploring this abandoned, underground city. Eventually we came to be chased by a horde of goblins. 2 men to fight. Think like 40-50 enemies. Almost a small army. We had found a ladder and we're escaping along the rooftops. We came to a point where we had to roll an acrobatics check to proceed. Myself and another member of our party, wearing heavy armor, miserably failed our checks. So now the party was split with 3 running across roofs and 2 of us running through the streets. After picking ourselves off the ground and tallying fall damage on our character sheets, we continue our run through the abandoned city with prompts from the GM of whether we wanted to go right, left, straight at intersections, turn down alleyways, etc. Eventually I ask the GM where we are and if we're still being chased. He informs us that we still hear some commotion in the distance, although it is further away than before, and we appear to be in some financial district. Now the smart move is to keep running, since we appear to be losing our pursuers. But this is D&D, so clearly we didn't go with the smart move. Me. Financial district? With like banks? GM. Yeah, sure, I guess. Me. I search the abandoned banks for a vault. GM. You're being chased by a small army, and you want to rob this place? Me. It's not robbery, it's abandoned. So eventually we find a bank vault after some in-game time. The vault is filled with coins which we stuff our bags with. As we're about to leave, the GM informs us that due to the time we wasted, we can now hear this horde just outside. So we need to roll stealth rolls to stay hidden alive. Now since we were both wearing heavy armor, we both had -8 or so modifiers to stealth rolls. My buddy rolls first and gets a nat 18, so a 10. Okay, so maybe if this horde is deaf we'll make it, right? I'm up. Die rolls, and it's a natural 1. We both rolled new characters that night. Should have just locked yourself in the vault and rested. Me and a group of friends were fighting a demon, and he eviscerated me. I was knocked unconscious and bleeding out, and my girlfriend was sitting the fight out because we had played with the deck of many things earlier, and she had the comet card. You gain 1 level if you slay the next enemy you face single-handedly. My bleeding out self was just perfect, and she debated with the DM for 5 minutes whether or not killing my character should give her that level. Thankfully, she didn't, and healed me instead, saving me from imminent death. The story of how I killed my first player is always a fun one. So, we have a friend who wants to play a cat person furry folk. Whatever, that's fine by me. Well, one of the stats in D&D is wisdom, and my player rolls a 6. 10 is average. So, he decides his character is really like an actual cat. Curious, kinda dumb, and fricks with everything it comes across. This curiosity led him to willingly seek out and ingest a dead rat that had just poisoned the cleric, which then poisoned the cat during a long seafaring journey, which nearly killed him, a rotting fish, and flakes of undead flesh. Long story. None of these were the culprits of his death. However, his downfall was a clear vial of liquid found in an old chest inside an ogre's den. I was in the middle of describing the vial when he stopped me dead by saying, "I eat it." I sat in stunned silence for a while. The flask was filled with a magical oil meant to temper weapons with the flame enchantment. I had him roll a fortitude save. He fails with a 2. I had him roll a will save. He fails with a 6. I then sighed, broke character, and told him he enchanted himself. Just like the liquid required, if he was lit on fire at any point, he would never go out. However, his cat was none the wiser, since there was no real effect on his body and his cat wasn't smart enough to search for one. He went on thinking it was gross ass water. Side note, if you've never played D&D, a rule is that you cannot metagame. Metagaming is when you act on something you know that your character does not know. So, you may know trolls are weak to fire, but your idiot barbarian character probably wouldn't, so you wouldn't go out of your way to use fire. So, what this means is that his cat not only wasn't aware of how he could die at the wrong moment, his cat also didn't even know something was wrong to get it removed in the first place. The cat then proceeded to die not because of the enchantment, but because he face rushed the ogre. He was later resurrected via demon summoning, but they used his old body, so his character was still enchanted with fire. His next death came the very same session, where he was defending a boat while it was trying to sail away. He unluckily decided to charge the only enemy character with a firebomb. The cat exploded in an enemy boat sinking inferno, killing half a dozen thieves, which allowed his allies to just barely escape alive. Eris the Shadow Sorcerer was my first player death as a DM, and I still miss that crazy cat. He always kept me on my toes. Out of all the zany, crazy, half-baked ideas my players sometime will come up with, I'm glad he was the one to break my murder cherry. 7 lives left, he could still be out there. The PCS needed to find a hospital to talk to a doctor about a specific method of healing magic, but they were new in the city and didn't know where one was. So the rogue, a teenage female changeling, decided to ask the shopkeeper of the shop they were in where the closest one was, but for some reason, she then rolled bluff, which he crit failed with a 1. The shopkeeper saw through her ruse and yelled, "You don't need a hospital, you're not wounded, you dang dirty liar, get out of my shop." The fighter, a large male minotaur, realized that this was going nowhere and used goring charge on the rogue. Upon seeing a huge minotaur horn burst through the chest of the young lass, the male Aladdin wizard saw where it was going and wanted to help. So in addition to the excess amounts of blood flowing from the girl's gaping wound, there was also blood being summoned upon her. After witnessing all this, the shopkeeper changed his mind and informed them where the hospital was. Now, it should be noted that the minotaur had recently accidentally ingested about 4 kilograms of gold coins which his stomach didn't appreciate, and decided to occasionally expel. So out of the shop sprints the minotaur, limp teenage girl hanging from his horns. Thinking he's now an ambulance screaming "WAWW WAWW WAWW" between coin vomits. Blood flying everywhere. The wizard chasing behind waving his wand, splashing even more blood over them and the street. She lived, and they got first-hand experience with that healing magic they wanted to ask about, so everything turned out well in the end. This is Diamond SpongeBob. He only appears every 200,000 videos. Subscribe for good luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.